content is for informational and educational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. Nothing contained here constitutes a solicitation, recommendation, endorsement, or offer to buy or sell any securities or other financial instruments whatsoever by Draper Gorin Blockchain, aka DGB, the presenter, or other associated parties for the content being provided. Please do your own due diligence and seek proper counsel.
Boom. Welcome. It's become a thing now where I have to look at Rankin when I'm saying boom to watch him do the mouth it too. It's now a thing. We've never talked about it ever until this moment, but it's like we're on.
I'm just so used to the boom now. It's like just after like 4 years of blockchain and booze and just hearing boom.
And you know what? This is Crypto Hang, DGB show, whatever the heck we're calling it, number 30. So we're like we're well in our way here, and I kind of love that the name changes like every other time, and whatever. Hey everyone, welcome. It's been a week. It's crazy. We were gonna have Nathaniel, not to be mixed up with Nathaniel, Nate, who's on right now from Founder Series, join us, one of our portfolio companies. But last minute we had to adjust, so Nathaniel will join us another week. But you guys met Nate, I think a few weeks ago when I was offline, and Rankin and Nate took over the stream. Nate is a long-term friend of the family here, been a part of our crew and done stuff with us in the past. And now he is a part of our team. So we're stoked to have you on. What's up, guys?
This morning.
What's going on?
We've all been online in various calls and things all morning, so it's not it's not actually like our first thing of the day, although it kind of feels like it in some ways. Hold on, what's a better view like this? No, I kind of like this.
With Nathaniel, I was going to wear a more traditional shirt, but since he's no longer here, I just had to go full crypto and just throw a crypto shirt on.
Avalanche. We need to make a new run of our DGB shirts because Nate doesn't have one. A few team members don't have one yet. Or do we make like a new version that's slightly different, just so that we can kind of pretend like the old ones are like the first run? Create some scarcity.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to find a better shirt company myself. Like all my NFT shirts that I made are like completely like rubbing off the ground.
They're really, those, when you make the one-off shirt, remember when there's that one crew, we maybe bring them back, that was doing the Web3 shirts, that was like really high quality one-off shirts, but most of the one-off shirts you buy online are pretty cheap and crappy. Yeah. I used custom ink for these. They were really good, pretty good quality for the cost, but we bought like a couple dozen, so it wasn't like just one shirt where it's like an iron-on.
Alon, who'd you use for a throwback of the Crypto Invest Summit shirts? Because those ones have actually stayed in condition pretty good.
I think that's who I'm talking about, the crew. Now I need to give them the proper love. So those are the guys that did the where we did the we had the apes on the shirts, do the the spray paint ones. Yeah. I want to make sure I give them love. Because those guys did so good. I'm connected with their people on
because I'm getting ready to order some more shirts with some NFTs on it, and I need to know where to go because I'm just not happy with my previous offer.
Well,
I'm trying to.
I've been buying all these NFTs over the last couple of months, and even though the market's dropping, I'm still buying NFTs, and I buy them for shirts. And so I need some love on some shirts to figure out where I'm going to.
So you're going to put each NFT that you've bought over the last couple months onto a different shirt.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I got a collection of NFT shirts. I mean, people kind of laugh at it, but it's I'm always wearing a different shirt that has a different NFT on it. And they usually have a message.
I like it.
Oh yeah, I've got some good ones too.
Yeah, no. Rankin is like probably. Merchandise. Oh, hold on though. Let me get the Alex from Merchandise. I wanna. It's spelled like merchandise without the N. Let's see if they're still around. I hope they are. They're really good people. They created great quality stuff. They're really good guys. We should try to have them on. They're print on demand. So what I remember about talking to them is they worked for some really big brands and stuff, and they were explaining to me how the biggest brands in the world like Nike have really high quality control, right? And so they're never were able to do like one-off shirts because to do it one-off at their quality, like it had to be able to withstand a certain number of like hundreds of washes at this temperature,
Yeah.
stuff like that. So
Right.
they worked on special technology to make that quality actually work and meet the stuff.
Oh,
Their
Yeah.
stuff really way higher quality, but they also had higher quality like shirts too, like the shirts and the sweatshirts. They would
the garment. Yeah.
Well,
which,
so what's their name? Merchandise.
well, for guys like Rankin and I who are old, t-shirts are supposed to be like $3 when they're a blank, and buying $100 t-shirt seems insane, but I understand that that's what life is now.
Well,
But
I mean, they were still $20, but when you buy a $20 or $50 shirt, I don't mind paying $50 for a shirt if I know the graphics going to stay on. But if I wear it for a month and all of a sudden the graphics starts peeling off, it's like not
Right.
cool.
yeah,
No.
yeah. So we should talk to them about maybe we should talk to them about doing the DGB shirts and stuff and seeing if they'll hook us up with like a run of high quality stuff. So we're not just this. I told you custom ink ordered a couple dozen last minute when we did a team trip a few months ago, but now we can think of something. We can do some better stuff. Maybe we get some for the community too, who's
Well,
watching here.
I think when we do the DGB, we should still have like an MT in the back of the shirt. They like
Something.
the old school shirts, right? Where you have like the TNC and
I did a
Oh.
when our family got into fantasy football, I did a jersey for us, and I had like our last names on the back, and we each had a number because like
Nice.
the companies that do the one-off shirts will allow you to make like jerseys for like if you have like a company softball match or whatever. So it allows you to do the numbers and the names on the back, which is kind of cool to as a funny thing. But what about I guess we got to make sure all our team members get really cool NFTs too if we did something like that. I still think
Yeah.
we have our logo, this one, right? And
Yeah.
one of the versions of it where it's just the dot slash has the TM. And my joke was every time Josh, who does our branding stuff, sent it to me, I would edit it on Photoshop and I would change the TM to say GM for good morning, like the meme in
For
the
good
crypto
morning.
space. And so that was my joke every time. I still think we need those GM shirts, like the shirts are just like maybe dot slash GM. That would be a cool thing, or maybe even just small on the back, like right here. I don't know. Lot of time and effort, but I should bring this back up. If you are an early stage startup, that is in the space, I wanted to make some joke about how we've been talking about t-shirts for 15 minutes, or an early stage investor who's interested in learning more about getting into the blockchain space and what we do, please reach out. If you reach out, you also get on our newsletter list. That's an update I'm going to make this week to the website. Is you'll be able to sign up to the newsletter more easily. But join us, dgb.vc. We to recap what we do is we invest in early stage startups at the earliest stage. So we kind of have two ways in which we work. We either meet young in their journey of this company. I don't necessarily mean in age, entrepreneurs who are just getting started on an idea, and we help amplify what they do, or we help put together teams around ideas that we have or ideas that are happening in the industry that we want to be a part of. So we accelerate companies or incubate companies at those earliest stages. We also then invest in companies as they grow, but our main thing is the early stage companies. So if you're an entrepreneur or you know somebody working on something, or you're an investor and you meet a company and they're too early for you, send them our way. You know, Nate, you've been with us now for a few weeks. What's been some of the most exciting things you've got to work on, or that you're pumped about, you know, in our ecosystem?
Man, I'd probably say Ivory is one of the most exciting things so far, just in terms of they're able to do in real estate. So for those that don't know, Ivory is an appraisal software that you can go ahead and utilize. But the best thing about it is, if a normal appraiser is going to take you, 3 to 5 hours to do, this is going to be going ahead and get completed in 15 minutes. So cuts down the cost, saves time and energy, and also gets you the answers that you're looking for at a fraction of the time. So really look at this.
Yeah. Very cool. Think about it, right? So there are products that exist on the internet that can give you kind of ballpark, crappy estimates of value of homes, right? They're fine for like you see your Zillow estimate when you're going down the thing, but they're not. They're really hard to get accurately. And then there are appraisals that take human beings. They show up with a clipboard, they take pictures, they do all the stuff, and takes the fastest ones. If they're like young, crazy computer nerd appraisal people, they could get it done in like 3 hours, 5 hours, but you spend $500 minimum usually. And it takes a week for the most part to get one of those, right? So this product actually gives you the actual license, what the license appraisals give you, like the traditional official ones that you could use for refinancing and for getting insurance and things like that on a property. But it can be done in minutes, and it's really, really cool. And what you're touching on is interesting, because we have, what we like to do is not just find companies that we think are really interesting, or find entrepreneurs that are doing interesting things, but then once we find them, we try to find complementary services or introduce them to different people and add a lot of value. And so if you think about what having close to real-time appraisals could bring to the blockchain industry, lots of people, the big buzzword right now is RWAs, right? RWA stands for real world asset. The buzzword was, security token a few years ago. It's a similar, probably identical thing depending on who you're talking to, but just taking real world assets, digitizing them, makes them more efficient, right? Makes them easier to deal with, makes you able to do the things we take for granted in crypto, like borrowing against your assets instantly, versus having to talk to a bank, spend a week negotiating credit reports, all that stuff. So now if you think about the back end of these real world assets, mortgages being digitized, mortgages for the consumer feel like one thing, but the banks and the institutions and the groups are constantly packaging and buying and selling these products in bulk, like in 500 mortgages in a package they sell from one bank to another, thousands even, right? Or these hedge funds or these groups that are going to be creating funds of real world assets aren't going to have an easy way of actually valuing those assets in somewhat real time to be able to allow you to trade and buy and sell them, right? So if I have a package of 500 loans and I want to sell you a share of them on some digital exchange, how do you know the health of that package of loans, right? There are parts of it that you'll know, like, are people paying their mortgages? What are their average credit report data, whatever. But none of that stuff exists today in a real-time way for any of those groups to actually do it. So it requires tons and tons of humans, right? So that one company that actually is a great company, revenue-generating company that can take a real problem and solve it, could also be applied to a ton of other applications in our space. So it's just an example. I see Rankin, you're like rubbing your hands together. What you want? Jump in, interrupt me, because I'll just keep talking.
No, I know, but it kind of gets me excited, right? Because so one of the platforms I've been watching is BendDAO, and BendDAO allowed people to borrow against their NFTs, and I've been watching people do liquidations on NFT projects that nobody's paying attention to, right? and so like Dakotas were real popular at one point, and I saw a guy pick up like 3 or 4 Kodas that were liquidated on there, and he picked them up for a pretty darn good price from where they used to be at, right? Yeah. And so you're talking about this, and I'm thinking about real estate and buying up liquidation, and here you could use something like Ivory. In 15 minutes, get an appraisal of approximate value of a property.
Yeah, not just like the Zillow estimate thing, but actual appraised value, a legit one that looks at all the comps who've sold in the neighborhood. Yeah.
And then in DeFi, imagine you could just go, oh, I'm going to buy up this liquidation on this piece of real estate that's tokenized over here, and then in 15 minutes have the appraisal price, and then in the liquidation, and then in 30 minutes you bought a property on liquidation in DeFi,
and then sold it, and then sold it. And then sold it or borrowed against it instantly. Yeah, well, imagine, okay, so Nate, you're not as much of an insane crypto dude as we are, and I probably am not as even into the DeFi as deep as Rankin is nowadays. But there are things that people do. They're like, so engineers do things called flash loans sometimes, where they actually look at certain transactions that could be done instantly in a single transaction. So they go, can I buy this, do this thing, borrow against this other thing, and sell it all in one transaction? And they can kind of run these scenarios, and if it is even 1 cent profitable, right? They can instantly do it.
Over gas fee.
There's gas fees and other things, but they can measure these things, right? So you can run these bots and do all of these things, and just imagine the efficiency, right? Because right now, when you look at pools of loans and want to create arbitrage opportunities, like, whoa, this one is undervalued, I could buy it and then sell it there. That's like a relationship based. It's also, there's a bunch of contracts to look at. There are all of these things, and it takes at minimum days, but even if you could get it done in 1 day, it's just tons and tons and tons of work. Imagine instant settlement of these things, right? Like, if you owned or instant settlement, on portions of it. It gets into the securities laws, which makes it weird. But like, imagine if, Nate, we were like, I met you, you were going to CLU, the university here in Thousand Oaks, and imagine if we saw a house next to CLU for sale. We knew that we could throw 3 or 4 students or something in there. It would pay for itself. And then we decide, you know what? We don't want to own 100% of this thing. We want to sell portions of it to our friends, and it's revenue generating, and you could buy a share for $20 and earn 25. And over time, all of a sudden, these digital appraisals become more relevant, and you can realize, okay, this is revenue generating. If I own a $100 share, I make maybe $1 a month on top of the $100 share that I own. But all of a sudden, the housing market moves up. Inflation is nuts. The house is worth 20% more. Imagine being able to borrow against that, be able to sell it, be able to, maybe even make a vote amongst all of the shareholders and go like, if 50% or more are willing to sell it, we're just liquidating it, right? Like, and be able to instantly make those decisions though. Like, it's like being able to receive an offer on a home you own, even though you didn't list it for sale, and being able to go like, you know what? Done. Boom. I'll sell 50% of my home to these people.
That's where we're heading. Right? That's where we're heading.
Well, there is one negative though. I heard something like Biden.
There's a lot of negatives.
Well, no, but Biden wants, apparently, I heard like Biden wanted to was proposing a 5% rent.
It's a BS. It's a BS. Okay, here's the thing.
No, lose value over time because of inflation.
Sure. No, but the thing is, the thing that he's proposing is already a law in almost every single major city. Right? Yeah. There are rent control laws that exist almost everywhere. And what he's saying is, if somebody is in your rental property, you can only raise it a certain percentage every year. And the problem with that is like, yes, it's government intervention into kind of free markets, but those free markets don't actually exist right now because there's already all of these rental laws across the country. And almost every single state has rules that are even harder than that already. So it's kind of like when a government official does the kind of BS minimum wage kind of, he's posturing to a certain category of people who go, yeah, that should exist, but it already exists probably at a bigger level.
Anybody in politics that goes into politics before they pass a bill has to show an understanding of what inflation really is.
Sure, but I mean,
But
both
most
sides,
people don't understand.
both sides play that game. But it's the same thing. It's like most shouldn't every president, even though like I'm everyone knows my super liberal politics and things like that, and I'm who I am. But like shouldn't every president, right? Every president is the commander in chief, right?
Except for Biden, because he referenced somebody else.
Okay, but because he's an old man and he misspoke. And that's going to happen. That's going to happen more and more and more. And we shouldn't go down that rabbit hole because
we'll all do it.
Trump says all sorts of nonsense all day long, and we're going to pretend like that's okay. That's freaking insane. But what I'm saying is, just as an example of what you just said, should they understand what inflation is? Sure. But literally the economic advisors who do 100% understand what inflation is on both sides are lying to fit their agenda and say on one side, inflation is gone. We've beat it, right? Like that's crazy nonsense.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, for the same reason, shouldn't the president also have served in the military at some point? Should actually understand what it is to risk your life and maybe go to war, even though I don't want anyone to like. It's kind of a crazy thing. Like you're in charge of the military, but you've never served a day in the military.
Now you just got to be a lawyer somewhere in your history.
What?
Now you just have to have been a lawyer.
That's serving. That's serving. Modern day serving.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is the whole idea of all of these things are such nonsense. Remember, I think last week I did the whole yelling and screaming about the TikTok commercial during the Republican debate thing. It's just, we're so like, it's such a it's everything is so surreal and it's so nonsense. It just drives me so nuts. And I said I didn't want to go down this rabbit hole, but all you had to do is like say one word. Here's an interesting thing. Talking about interesting, I want to go to the crypto world, which is kind of neat. Think about Polygon, right? Polygon, the chain layer 2 on Ethereum. Talking about being qualified to run with all of the legal things being hit in the crypto world. Who did they make their CEO? Our buddy Mark Boyron, who's like one of the most OG early crypto lawyers, especially in DeFi. He was like the general counsel for DYDX. Then he was the general counsel for Polygon. And when all these legal issues were starting to come in the crypto world, they made him the CEO. So it's pretty crazy to take one of the crypto legal experts and make them the CEO of the company, right?
It's smart to be able to guide
super smart, right?
In the right direction. Yeah.
But it just shows, when private companies want the best expert, they put the best expert for what's going on. That's actually, versus the public world where it's like a weird popularity contest on who could, tell the best lies to the single issue voters in each category.
It's kind of like how up until 2 years ago, you really didn't see any major sports companies and newsrooms promoting like sports betting, right? Not in terms of advertising.
The second it became socially acceptable, they're talking odds on primetime NFL games. They go, right. What do you think? Vegas has the odds at this. And I was like, the first time I heard that was crazy because I remember actually knowing a guy who was a commentator on the NFL Network, and like they couldn't have ads for any of the betting stuff, but they couldn't even like acknowledge that betting existed. Like it was like a funny thing. Like now they're talking odds on primetime TV. It is funny. I don't know if it's a good or bad thing.
So during the NBA finals, they were live streaming during the halftime, the NBA 2K results of their esports gamers. Then it brought me to the whole thing of Racino, right? Yeah. One of our DGB companies, and how like eventually we can start doing all the sports betting with esports games as people and users are watching it, And I think will be interesting just to see the evolution of that type of stuff.
Oh, I mean, yeah, because think about, you used to be, you go to like a bar in Vegas where you could do the closest like thing to real time bets, but it was like in a specific location, maybe across a few casinos. I don't even know how that worked, but there's like that category. Now people are doing those bets in real time off of their phones while they're watching the games live. And then soon there's going to be derivative things on all of it. Actually, I have an idea we need to talk about. I want to launch an NFL, actually any fantasy sports idea that I think we might build in DGB. So I won't say it quite yet, but the idea, there's just different ways of approaching these same markets and derivative things. And I think what's interesting is to bring it back to like fintech and real estate and all these things is most of the ideas aren't these novel, crazy ideas that are brand new. The biggest, most exciting part of it is like the removal of maybe gatekeepers, right? Or borders in that world. Like it's no longer a product that's only available to rich people who can pick up their phone and talk to a private banker, or there's no longer minimum sizes of investments, because I can think about like what DGens did. DGens is a sports betting website. They're in the DGH portfolio. They kind of it's kind of, it still exists. It's still cool. It's there, but it didn't grow as much as you wanted. But what they did revolutionize is peer-to-peer sports betting, right? If Nate wants to put $100 on the Packers on one side of the bet, but I don't have $100 to bet against them, I can buy $10 on the other side of that, and Rankin could buy the other $90 or whatever, and you can do that on a smart contract in real time, P2P, which means no central house, nobody getting in the way of those things. And essentially what we just did was make the same $20 bet we might do at a barbecue in my backyard, but we did it online with people around the world on whatever sporting event we wanted to. Now, think about how that works with, again, with real estate, with all of these categories where, it can be a lot of fun, and it'll create these really cool efficiencies, and it'll cut out all of the scammers and middlemen, and, even if you don't call the, you don't want to put them in the category of scam, but a bank that charges a fee because, one, because they can, or two, because they have such a high overhead, they start to have to do these crazy things. But like, if you have a bank account, a savings account, you put under a minimum amount in it at Bank of America, right? Like, one of the biggest banks in our country, and you don't hold a high enough minimum balance, they charge you a fee on that. When you put money in the bank, they are leveraging it times thousands, and they're earning interest and making money off of that money. So you're giving them money, which earns them revenue. And then they go, well, you didn't give me enough money, so I'm going to find a way to then charge you a fee and take that money away from you, which is like it should be the most un-American, illegal thing in the freaking world. I can't buy think about this. The consumers have fought, and if I buy you a gift card, that gift card cannot expire. You should be able to use that gift card forever. That's legal, whatever. That's completely just the law. But if I put $100 in my bank account, and in their terms and conditions, they said the minimum amount is $500, they can take that money from me. That they're making money off of that money. Like it is, like it is so crazy unfair, right? But this is where I get mad at where you can get mad on both sides of arguments of like, hey, there should be no government. Like people go, well, free markets, bro. But that's just government intervention that allows them to do that, because that should be illegal, right? That's not fair by any means of anything.
DeFi, bro.
Exactly. Well, DeFi is a pure version. It's the argument of, I think that like pure anything on the educational sense could be a utopia for us. If we actually had pure capitalism and free markets, that would be a utopia. If we had pure actual socialism, that would be a utopia. Neither of those things has ever existed, because there's, dictators and politicians who ruined it for everyone, or who have pretended like that. Yeah, I think in this country we've gotten close to some of those things, but it's not, there's always
taxation, unfortunately.
We can do better. Well, here's the thing is is that we do have some choices, and then other things were forced in. And
We have the illusion of choice. Illusion of choice.
it's the nutty thing to me, and is the idea that, you know, if the government had more money, they could fix the problems. And the issue, the math doesn't math up, right? If you took like, right, because there's the argument of we're going to charge more taxes
to solve all their problems.
It's nutty.
What you said.
No, the idea that they think that more money will solve their problem.
Oh, okay. The idea. Okay,
the idea that they think that more money will solve their problem. I don't think that if they taxed us more, if they were super efficient, if everything was transparent, and we went, oh, the dollar I spent on taxes went to this, and I actually believed that it went to the right place, and I went, raising my taxes by 5% would give every single person in this country perfect health insurance, and there would be no need for unions for workers anymore because they have everything they need. You know, I'd go, done, charge us all 5% more in our taxes, and we live in a place where every single citizen has free school and is healthy. And you know what? We would end up all being more successful that way. I know what you're thinking, David, but it's bullshit, right? Because I'm 100% sure that we could probably pay half of the amount of taxes we do as a country and provide 10x better services than we do right now too, if there wasn't bullshit bureaucracy that created all of these rules and laws and insurance companies that are basically, you know, gouging all of us in different ways. Right? So
I like Warren Buffett's idea. You just pass a law that says anytime there's a deficit of more than 3% of the GDP, all sitting members of Congress are ineligible for re-election. And you would
imagine, just in general, just imagine if those rules.
That idea.
You know, just imagine if there were actual checks and balances for government spending.
Amazing.
1,000% everyone would have health insurance. 1,000%, you know, our infrastructure would be better. They'd be able to create those, you know, government jobs they want to create by, like, you know, printing money and doing like a New Deal type of thing. We don't need more taxes. It just needs to be more efficient, right? It's all being wasted on bullshit and going into the hands of the wrong people.
We have bad incentives in all of our systems, right? Everything is about making money. Where drugs, the companies want to make you sick. They want you to be sick because if you're sick, they continue to sell you drugs. So, like, I was listening to this podcast. I was listening to this YouTube video that was like 2 hours long of this guy who used to be a surgeon, used to be a back surgeon. And he got to the point where he was so tired of doing back surgeries, right? Because he said, it's like you have a roof leak and you ruin the inside of your house. And so what you do is you go replace the insulation, the drywall. You did everything to make it look good again, but you didn't fix the roof leak. And he said, I'm fixing people's backs and they still end up having problems 6 months down the line because they're not fixing the underlying issues. They're not living right. They're not sleeping right. They're not healthy in general. And he said, the problem is we want to keep people sick and just take away their pain, but not actually solve the real problem. He's all,
that's what printing money for the government does. And then a lot of people around us are excited because there might be a stimulus check or something, but the percentage of the stimulus check that even goes to the people versus that goes to other places is so small that if there was a stimulus check that and inflation went up the same exact percentage, it would end up being a meaningless exercise, but it would make people feel better in the short term. But at least it would be, you know, the math would balance itself out. So people who saved the stimulus check would actually be in a better place. People who spent it wouldn't be in a great place, but at least they'd have something to pay their bills. But when the percentage of what goes to the people is so small, and then the huge percentage goes into those financial institutions and goes to all of those groups to create more, to lend more money and actually amplify the effect of the inflation, it screws all of us, right? And so it's exactly the same thing. The problem is there's a bunch of real problems, and instead of fixing those problems, we find ways to extract more value from the people.
Pretty
right?
much.
It's
Gotta
it's
fix the money, fix the world.
That's why this week, I mean, every time there's these political conventions and then the primaries and all this stuff, why I'm screaming at my TV and going nuts, because think about how many years one side of the aisle has been making fun of the other side of the aisle for going, so what Trump said that, so what the Republicans said this super offensive thing, so what that Trump said that the school shooters' families should just get over it, right? And then all of a sudden every Republican and every person on that side of it was like, oh my gosh, this horrible rhetoric from the Democrats or why he got shot. Like it's they're like, everyone is such a huge hypocrite that it's just such nonsense. And I also, as much as I want politicians who are super pro crypto to be there, and it looks like the
vice president holds some Bitcoin.
That vice president he owns Bitcoin. That's a good thing. He also called Trump a Nazi a few years ago, and they're pretending like that didn't exist, right? Like, so it's like we're gonna take these hypocrites' word for what they're saying today and go, oh, it's gonna be good for us tomorrow. But they're just gonna go back on their word tomorrow, and then we're gonna go, oh shit. They're just like everyone else. They're just like the other politicians, just a new not even a new establishment, pretending like they're a new establishment. They're all part of the same.
If you're a one-issue voter and you're a Bitcoiner, like, that's a positive.
Yes, yeah. If you're a one-issue voter and you're a Bitcoiner, it's good for you. If you're a one-issue voter and you're a Bitcoiner, you can use that moment to feel good. But there's a very high likelihood, just like everything else they say and do, they're gonna find a way to screw you.
No. What we're gonna do is we're gonna take out like the whole you're gonna have to track your stocks if you're in politics, but at least you'll be okay with Bitcoin.
That you know what? If I would like to see that actually happen, if they somehow, well, the problem is this. I think certain politicians have felt like they're above the law and have been so brazen. And Nancy Pelosi could say crazy ass shit like, I don't know what my husband decides to buy and sell. That's his own portfolio. It just happens to be that I had a committee meeting about electric cars, and my husband the next day made a huge $1 million bet on what I happen to, be in charge of. And they just say this shit out loud as if it's just totally normal and there's no checks and balances. But then there's all the rest of the politicians are probably smart enough to do these things in blind trust, or to have, enough arm's length away so we wouldn't ever know. But it's just, they've gotten so brazen that they'll just do this stuff, or they don't realize technology exists to track these things, and it's crazy. But I think if somehow we're able to track and trace them, that'd be great. But it's not like if they pass the law saying sitting government people can no longer trade in the public markets and all those things, they'll just have a broker, a person, manage a fund for them of their capital somewhere, because otherwise they will not be in politics. These people are not, almost none of them are, maybe they got into it when they were younger for those reasons, but now that they're in power or they're at this stage, how many of these people are actually doing it for the public good, right? You're
doing it because they're career politicians.
And so that's where the incentive mechanisms need to change, right? Like, most of their jobs are not necessary. Most of what they do aren't aligned with what they promise they're going to do. So if they couldn't become career, 100%, I think so. Two things will happen. Well, DeFi can do it, right? Because there's it's a market that is not touched by any of these people, at least directly. So you can participate and deal however you want. It's like the most pure form of a union, right? Imagine if you and I and Rankin decided that we wanted to collectively purchase something, or collectively create an insurance policy for our families, and we just went rogue and did it ourselves instead of going through the bureaucracy. We could do that, right? And that's essentially what a union is, what this country is supposed to be, right? Is we're all getting together and doing things collectively. DeFi does that on coordination level, can do that on a finance level, can do it on a bunch of different levels where it's you participate or not, and it's your choice. And so DeFi can, and it does in some ways even completely circumvent regulation, which isn't always a good thing for people personally, depending on where they live in the world. But for the first time ever, young people are moving to other countries, moving to different places, and just deciding to live their life however they want that way. But it's transparent and it's open. So if I do something, everyone can see what I do. Everyone can track and trace it. So, and then if I do something that is not good for the health of the community, but then I try to posture and pretend like I'm a person, I get thrown under the rug, and the smartest people in the world, kick you out essentially, right? Or at least know who you are. The issue with politics is no transparency whatsoever. So what DeFi has the ability to do is kind of like what I always say, like, is two things will happen. Better products will be created, right? All of those instant settlement, all of the lower overhead, all of that stuff, less human intervention, whatever, will create probably better products, or the pure version of products that are supposed to exist but don't really exist right now. And the banks and institutions, and if we're talking about politics or whatever, they'll have to do two things. They'll either be put out of business, right? Or they'll have to compete. And then you'll say, you know what? I get a lower interest rate from the bank than I do in DeFi, but it's way more convenient for me. And I like being able to go and talk to my banker, and you'll make that decision yourself. And if they can compete on that level, the banks could beat out DeFi in a lot of different ways because of that, right? Customer service, not having to hold your self-custody if you trust them enough for that.
They must be using Live Financial for the mortgages.
They must be, right? And so all I'm saying is that DeFi has the power to give you access to more. In certain countries, give people access that they don't have at all, right? Because of all sorts of reasons, economies of scale, regulation, sketchy governments, whatever it is, it gives more people access, more people freedom. And the worst thing it could do is force the banks to compete. Best thing it could do is completely, set the whole system on fire, and we'll see what happens next. You think,
I realized the importance of an NFT yesterday when somebody bumped one of my pieces of art in my house and it dented it. Like I damaged a piece of artwork in my house. I'm like, man, if this is an NFT, this wouldn't have happened.
If it was an NFT, it wouldn't be on your wall.
No, you can print them out. You can print them out, right?
I know you can print it.
Art value is the fact that you have like proof of work.
Yeah, the value of the art doesn't necessarily exist in the physical thing. It exists in the original copy.
I mean, in a physical one, I guess it does. It's the scarcity, the rarityability. The problem is like I can't replace it. And I don't know. I'm just like, man, thank God for NFT.
It's a different world, and it's a different category of people who probably love it and hate it, right?
One area I could really see the DeFi industry really like taking a hold of is the import and export business between like countries, because you wouldn't have to deal with banks and the regulations as much.
The whole supply chain, right? The whole supply chain and being able to trust and all that stuff is where it's going. I think in the 2017, hype of where people were launching all these things, a bunch of groups tried to do these supply chain management, things, and they were just crazy early. It was the same group, like same type, not the same people. The same types of people wanted blockchain ticketing, everything on chain, and it was just way too early. And now we're actually seeing it where it absolutely will make sense. And those are real world assets, right? So that's a way of going RWAs, right? Like I know that a shipment of pistachios is coming from this place. We were talking yesterday with Adele. I was talking about pistachios.
I need to try them now.
Yeah, so I'll get you some. That's in the commodities world, that's a thing, right? And like there are groups that buy and sell, but they don't always know the quality. They have to have these relationships, do these things, like gold sitting somewhere, like a shipment of bicycles coming from China, right? All of these things exist, and the tracking and tracing is getting better and getting digital, right? Like we track these things with UPS and FedEx and all these things pretty real time, but the authenticity and all of these things are all going to be tied in, all going to be digital. And again, the more efficient you make those things, and the more you're able to track and trace and know and do all of these things, way more efficient these markets can get, right? Like people trade these derivatives on weird exchanges of commodities and stuff like that, but does the commodity actually exist? Is it sitting in a warehouse somewhere? Is it rotten at this point? Like all of those things will become more and more transparent and efficient. And then you start getting weird. Like think about, I have some buddies that I met from the NFT world that love to flip sneakers and stuff, right? They only do it on certain websites. They make good money doing it. It's like a fun collectible thing. Like some people collect comic books, some people collect, Nikes.
Right.
But, the chain of tracking and tracing some of these, and maybe even keeping them in certain warehouses and things like that, can happen on chain now. And you went from governments, and trade deals and different things like that. But that's just on a micro level to a macro level, right? Like these things are going to be so crazy. Imagine DeFi products on top of your sneakers. What if I own a pair of $1,000? What were those? They must be worth even more now. But remember, there was like some Nikes that like had the design from the Portland airport or something. Like this was like probably 15 years ago. There's like Portland airport had a design on their carpet that was like iconic or something, and they made Nikes that had that design on it. And they were like really rare or something. I have no idea if it's still is. Let's pretend I own one of those for $1,000. Can I borrow against that? Can I ship it to you? And while it's in shipment to you, can you already, because you have verification in some ways, already sell it or flip it or do something? Or could you flash loan it in a way where you buy it, do some deal, sell it in the same transaction, and use it as a financial instrument, right?
Well, so the problem with borrowing against it is that means there has to be a third party or somebody who's holding custody of it that you trust.
Yeah.
And then somebody who's willing to put up money against that asset.
But there's going to be all of those things for all these assets, right? Like it starts with the banks, right? The banks, there's a $7 trillion a year alternative investment market in the United States. It's probably bigger now because of inflation, but a few years ago, it was $7 trillion.
I don't think it starts with the banks. I don't think it starts with the banks. The reason is because
no. I'm using this as a category as an example. But the reason why it'll get into why I'm using the banks is because it just shows when there is a bunch of stuff worth money set aside and they don't have the efficiency to deal with it, what will happen once they do have the efficiency to deal with it? So think about, why are banks talking about real world assets, especially in the private markets? Right now, the assets that are trading in the private markets are Nate works at Facebook. He got shares of Facebook stock. There's rumors that Facebook is going to go public in a year. Like, I'm taking us back in time a little bit. Now there's groups that are going, I'll buy 100K of those shares of your stock, Nate, because I've got a customer that wants to buy them and I can take a spread. Like I can be a fee, but it's very human centric. Like humans are doing it. There's contracts, there's laws, whatever. Now, what you have is a part of that $7 trillion private market. You have shares in a private company that can be sold and traded, but not efficiently, and you need humans to intervene. Now, there's a small percentage of wealthy people who can call up a banker at their bank and say, hey, I want a loan for this thing, or I want to finance this purchase I want to make. They could sell things to finance the purchase, but that's not what wealthy people do. They finance them because they find ways to actually make more money off the assets they have than it would cost them to get more capital to buy the next thing, right? So it's a business decision. And the wealthiest people, collect more and more and more assets, right? They have lots of real estate, all these things. So that's what they do. They can call up a banker and do it. But 99% of the clients of a bank can't afford that and don't have that, but they do have a home. They might have a real estate property. They might own shares in a private company. And it doesn't make sense for a bank to be able to deal with that. It's too hard for them to actually value it. There's too many human errors. It also costs money for humans to actually, hourly wages and things. Like, it's just too expensive for them to deal with that. But imagine when you take those $7 trillion and all of a sudden you unlock that as collateral for the bank, right? Now the bank has tens of millions of clients at their banks that they couldn't actually offer products to before, that they can now very easily offer products to. That's basically taking something that exists that the bank couldn't do anything with efficiently and go, all of a sudden we're unlocking millions and millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in potential revenue for the banks, more credit for these people, more offers. Imagine if you got a thing in the bank, say, hey, you worked at Amazon for a few years. If you still own shares, we could let you borrow against them. And all of a sudden you go, oh crap, I can buy that property. Maybe I should buy that apartment by CLU and rent it to my friends and make that move. You couldn't do that before, right? Because you just held a piece of paper in your bank account that when there's an exit one day, it'll turn into something. Or you had some other. Now think about that on a smaller level, sneakers, right?
Hold on.
The second
important measurement there. ROIC has to be greater than the WACC, which is return on investment capital, should be greater than your weighted average cost of capital.
Correct.
If that's not the case, you're losing proposition.
Well, it's that's why you never use a credit card to finance purchases of an investment, right?
Yes.
Just dumb, stupid thing to do, right? Even if you see you think you want to buy some Doge on your credit card, don't ever do it, right? Because on average you will lose big time, and the wealthiest people
Unless you got insider knowledge, which you shouldn't have.
Right. Well, no, I mean, what kind of
just like Doge? I don't know.
I don't know exactly on Doge, but here's the thing is, wrapping it up, because we're actually at the end, is all of these things don't exist today because of the inefficient markets or because they don't want to give you access to them, right? Certain powers that be go, you know what, it's easier for us. Hey, if you have access to these two, it might stop a company from going public. If it stops a company from going public, then you take away revenue and power from certain of the biggest financial institutions in the world, who are the only ones who are either licensed or able to take companies public, right, through certain things. If all of a sudden we have a liquid private market or a more liquid private market, you're taking something, you're now taking cheese away from them, right? And the interesting thing is, it's their fault, because if the public markets were efficient and you could go public earlier in your cycles, like you could maybe 50 years ago, 100 years ago, whatever, things change over time, we probably wouldn't have such a need for this stuff. We wouldn't be innovating so hard. But they've made it so expensive and so hard for the average person to participate, to grow their business and do these things, that, or to go public and all these things, that they've kind of forced us to come in and try to innovate them, or they're forcing us to fight them.
So real quick, what's fascinating, because I know we got to go, but like the NFT market, right? It's fascinating because you can compare it to the housing market, compare it to everything. A lot of these markets are artificially held up high, right? And what's fascinating, I bought this NFT at a really low price and then it went up. But the thing is what I think I'm finding out is the floor was artificially held high. And when some whale decided to dump, they sold off, which picked up every order going down the order book. And eventually the orders got higher and higher after coming back up off the bottom. And it really shows that markets are not liquid as people think. And so if you were to dump 100,000 houses onto the market, guess what? The price is going to crash, right? And it always, and the thing is there has to be buyers that buy that up. And then we see the same thing on Bitcoin all the time. You see these mass sales, and then you see the price gradually come back up, right? Dump, mass sales, gradually price comes back up. And it's because it's a market absorption, right? Markets can't handle anything really quickly. And so they have to adjust. And so it's, value is created because of the people willingness to hodl. But the moment their hodling is over, like markets crash, markets fall.
Well, it's easier to see in smaller markets, right? So that's why DeFi has been great education for a lot of us, because like don't realize like, oh, I hold this token on in my Zerion account. It says it's worth $1 a token, which means I just received 10,000 tokens in the mail, or in an airdrop, like just out of the sky. But then the second you go to sell, if the market's not liquid enough, you dump the price just trying to sell, and you'll never get the amount that you say that it says it's worth, right? And when we were early days of crypto and you start learning those things, you start realizing, oh, this is exactly how the stock market works, right? There's things like OTC markets, which are public stocks, but in a smaller exchange, right? And sorry, we're getting a message for the next meeting. And what you see is like a stock price might be there forever, but you actually look at the chart and it's like, it looks like stairs or like it's weird. And you're like, wait, why does that chart look like that? And you realize because there's actually nobody buying and selling these shares. So then one person does a single transaction. I go, hey, Nate, I'll buy these shares for you for $1,000 and you sell them to me. Now you've created the new price. And so the price goes up, but it goes like that, right? And then it stays, and price goes down. And it stays. It's not a chart that goes, like a mountain, because it's actually liquid. And so the smaller each market is, you start learning those things. And that's actually a lesson that's going to be learned when people start, tokenizing those sneakers and doing those things or whatever, and why you're not going to be able to borrow even close to like the full value of it, right? Because that would be really, really dumb for someone to give you full value unless they believed that's what it is. But they could borrow half of the value, and then when it goes down by half the price, you have the option to either they liquidate it, they take those sneakers from you, or you pay in more money to make sure you cover your losses. But we gotta go. I love going down these rabbit holes, but we're gonna have some of our entrepreneurs on. We should get the guys from Merchandise on, because we gave them some love too soon. Talk some NFTs with them and real world, all that stuff. But guys, this was fun. DGB. We'll see everyone next week. Everyone go to dgb.vc if you got a company you want to share with us. We're here. Answer any questions. Be your wingman in this blockchain space, and we'll see you all soon. Thanks, everyone. Boom.